Hello, Fearless Gamers! Matt here for Fearless Games, and we're going to continue on with our look at the 2010 Compendium. We went over leaderships and orders, we went over movement, we went over shooting, we went over area effect weapons and such. Now let's move on to the ordnance phase. This part is probably going to be about, this ordnance section is going to be about 90% clarification and 10% additional rules. Or rule changes. So let's dive right in. As stated before, that ordnance will not run out on the rolls of doubles, so any reference to this is ignored. For those ships, for those models that outright state they don't run out of ordnance, like the Remecy Starford or a Space Hulk or Tyranid fleets, they then get to double the number of ordnance they can launch in a turn, and on the flip side, increase the number of units you can have on the field for the entire fleet. So if you have, like, say, one ship that doesn't run out of ordnance and he has launch bays of 4 and 4, he can then launch 8 and 8, and that is his number of launch bays he contributes to the fleet's cap of ordnance that they can have on the field. Which is really nice. It makes those ordnance dudes even bigger, like the Remecy Starford is a monster with that kind of special rule. And also to continue on now with more clarifications here, ordnance in play may be recalled by immediately removing it from play in order to launch new markers from the ship's stem, if it has successfully reloaded ordnance. Attack craft recalled in this manner must be removed immediately and not expended on other targets, including enemy ordnance. This prevents a carrier from attacking a target to expend its attack craft in play, and then launching a new attack craft wave in a single turn. This rule does not apply to torpedoes, which do not run out and do not have a launch limit. Launching ordnance in any manner expends your ordnance. So say if you have a ship that has a launch bay of 4 and is only allowed to launch 2 because of cap limit or cap limit, or you decide you just only want to launch 2, you then don't have 2 to launch in your next turn. You've expended your ordnance, even though you still have those 2, and you have to reload ordnance again to launch more fighter waves and such. So you can't save. You basically can't bank ordnance to get them to launch in another turn. You have to, once you've launched, you have to reload ordnance to launch again. If a ship equipped with both torpedoes and attack craft launches only one or the other, it may still launch the other ordnance before rolling to reload. So if you launch fighters but not torpedoes, you can then launch torpedoes in the next turn without having to reload ordnance. Or you can reload ordnance for the attack craft, launch your torpedoes, and all that good stuff. Now, ordnance waves or servos count as one marker when being hit by direct fire weapons from, say, lances and gunnery tables. On a roll of a 6, the entire wave is removed, not one torpedo or one attack craft. Stated also in the rules, for torpedoes count as a single tab, so, attack craft comes, wipes them all out. At least that's how I've always interpreted the rules. And the whole, the wave gets destroyed, it's supposed to represent, like in those shows like Gundam, where they fire a beam right in the middle of the wave of fighters, and then they all prickle out like fireworks. It's the subsequent explosions causing a chain reaction, is what this really is representing. So now let's move on to the individual the different ordnances. Torpedoes. Torpedoes, regardless of its strength, is now represented by a Strength 3 marker with 1 or more D6 indicating the actual servo strength. So if you have a servo strength of 6, you'd put a 3 torpedo template down, and then a D6 with a 3 listed on it to represent that there's 3 more in the servo. Not a big fan of that, but I understand why they're doing that, is to make it easier to fire servos and keep them in their arcs and all that other stuff. You can split your torpedo servos. Single ships capable of launching 6 or less torpedoes cannot split servos at all. Single ships capable of launching servos larger than 6 may split their servos in 2, representing each one with a different D6 and 3 torpedo marker, but they cannot be fired at the same target. If you split your fire, they have to go at different targets. They can't be all fired at one target. Squadrons of capital ships or escorts are not obligated to fire their torpedoes in a single servo. So if you want, even though they're squadron, you don't have to combo all the torpedoes together. You can launch them individually. No torpedo marker can attack a target more than once per full turn, even if they are already in contact with it at the start of the movement or ordnance phase. So, if a torpedo marker moves and comes in contact with a ship, they then count as hitting that ship for subsequent turns. So the ship then moves through them. They don't get attacked again because the torpedoes are already passing by them at that point. And even on the same case, if the ship doesn't move in the ordnance phase, those torpedoes do. They don't hit the ship again. They're already, in essence, it's supposed to be they're already traveling. The ones that missed are already traveling past the ship, and they just couldn't do that. They just couldn't have any real reasonable way of representing that. So they just said, it just can only hit it once in a full turn. When launching torpedoes, the torpedo marker will technically be in all arcs that may be in multiple arcs until its final position this moment, especially when targeting ships in close proximity. However, it may not interact with anything out of its torpedo's actual firing arc. So, no matter how close the target vessel is to the shooting vessel. So say if a ship is in your side firing arc, and you move your torpedo to fire off to the side. It may be able to hit that ship, but because it's in the side arc, those torpedoes can't officially affect that side. It can only affect things that were in its firing arc. Granted, this changes, once they're on their way, but from launching, they can affect something that's not in their firing arc as they travel out of the vessel. When moving a torpedo servo, the center must always be in the same point along the line of fire. And mass torpedo servos, when launching a combined servo from a squadron, the servo must be in all the ship's appropriate firing arcs, and must be in all the ship's and its furthest edge and its furthermost edge at the limit of the speed from the farthest ship's stem. All the ships firing a combined servo must be in base contact, and note that some ships, such as the Orc Ravagers, cannot for any reason combine their numbers. So if you have a ship that's facing in the wrong direction, it can't fire its torpedoes in a combined set with that one. On the flip side, if a ship is out of the maximum range of the torpedoes, so if you measured from it and its torpedoes have not gotten past the front ship, then it can't be participated. The torpedoes have to end up ending. They could end up ending at the front of the first ship, but it has to be able to be placed there in order for them to be participating in the combination. And let's see, a ship that is actually in base contact with another friendly vessel may shoot through the friendly ship's base, even if they are not in squadron. Ships not in squadron cannot use this effect to combine turbo servos in any way and must always launch torpedoes separately. So in essence, if you're in base contact with another ship and you fire your torpedoes and they're not squadroned, you won't accidentally hit the ship in front of you. You can shoot under it. But if there's distance between the two, those torpedoes hit the dude in front of them, even if it's friendly or not. So they're just saying that only in base contact are they able to shoot under or above them. Once distance gets between them, then they can control if the torpedoes hit them or not. And turning torpedoes, it must turn them from the center of the wave, and you can't turn them the turn you launch them. The turn they launch, they fire in one straight direction, and the next turn they can then turn and do their all crazy turning thing. But I think the only people that actually have that are Tau, so that's only affected by the Tau players. So now let's move on to attack craft. This is your fighters, your bombers, your assault boats, your Thunderhawk gunships, and all that good stuff. And when used in a wave, they must be spread and move so they are always in contact with each other and they cannot be stacked. And they must be assembled into the smallest circumference possible, such as a block of 4, 2 rows of 3, or, for example, a single wave of 8 ordnance markers cannot be stretched out into a single file line 8 markers long. On the other hand, individual markers not in the wave can be organized in any formation desired as long as no single marker moves farther from the launching vessel. So you have to stage them in bricks, so they're the smallest wave possible. You can't stretch them out. And regular fighters can be doing that way, but they could only go as far as their maximum launching from the vessel. That point, I would assume then the one at the furthest end has already made its move, because it's moved its full distance. This way it doesn't double its movement. Now, attack craft can ignore any targets that are not actually in contact with it, but they cannot fly through enemy ship bases to attack a desired target behind them. However, attack craft can select a target vessel with small bases hiding inside the footprint of a large ship base as long as the attack craft actually have the range to reach the smaller base. This is the only manner in which attack craft may ignore the first ship's base they come in contact with. So say if you have a battleship and then an escort happened to land on its stem like a transport or something, the attack craft can ignore the battleship and go to the transport that's sitting on top of it as long as the distance between the ship and the stem of the tiny ship is there. That's the only time you can ignore ships to get to other ships, as if it's a smaller ship sitting on top of the stand of another ship. Then it can, dodge through and attack that one. Now, fighters in general must always interact with ordnance they come in contact with for any reason. This includes attack craft that behave as fighters but fulfill other roles, such as Space Marine, Thunderhawks, or Orc fighter bombers. Now, with resilient attack craft, these are attack craft that have a 4-up save. They can only attempt this save once per ordnance phase, regardless of attacking or being attacked. Even if they roll a 4+ to remain in play, they have to stop movement where the ordnance interaction took place and cannot move further for that ordnance phase, and they lose their 4+ save for the rest of the phase as well. And resilient attack craft that behave as fighters must always do so when in contact with other ordnance. So, Thunderhawk gunships count as bombers or attack craft. You can't make them not act like attack craft when it serves you. If they come into contact where they would normally affect it as an attack craft, then they act as attack craft. Now, let's say what happens if you've got 2 ships, 2 ordnance, like 2 enemy ordnance and 2 friendly ordnance that have resilience come in contact with each other. This is considered a multiple attack. Any second interaction with the same ordnance phase, such as attacking multiple markers in the same phase, will cause the marker to be automatically removed as normal fighters would be were they not resilient. The attacking player always decides the order of the ordnance interaction. So you've got 2 Thunderhawks coming in contact with Chaos Swift Death fighters. Thunderhawk 1 removes the first marker and makes his 4+ save, and it remains in play. You can then decide that Thunderhawk 1 attacks the other craft and takes that one out as well. So Thunderhawk 2 stays in play, and the 2 Chaos ships are removed. Okay. Now, opposing resilient ordnance. If 2 markers that both have a 4+ save attack each other, and both remain in play by successfully rolling their saves, they stop movement and remain in contact until the next turn's ordnance phase. However, if any marker that saves this attack again in the same phase, it is automatically removed it is automatically removed, along with the marker that attacked it. So, I guess you would say, well, what happens if they come in contact and they both save and the next ordnance phase happens? I guess then you can then decide if one is going to, go around or attack, depending on that front. That would be something you'd have to really work out with the opposing player. Now, if a wave containing resilient attack craft attacks or is attacked and a save is made, ordnance marker that makes the saves may no longer move. However, it may split from the wave to allow the rest of the wave to continue its movement. attack craft in the wave that were not attacked and thus don't use their 4+ save complete their movement as normal. So going off of this, I kinda it would seem that I made a mistake when I said waves always count as one fighter. For direct fire weapons from big ships, they count as one. Against ordnance, it's a 1-for-1 ratio. So that's how they seem to be doing. That's how they seem to word it here. That's not how they worded it in the main rulebook. So to clarify that front, if a wave of 5, 3 bombers, 2 fighters comes in contact with 1 fighter marker, 1 fighter gets removed, and now it's a wave of 4. 3 bombers, 1 fighter. Not the whole wave is removed. So on that front, I was wrong. But I was just going off of how they interpreted it and how they worded it in the rulebook, which is great that they have this down here because that we got clarification at that point. Now, Combat Air Patrol, CAP. This is when fighters are in base contact with a ship and perform screening. If, when doing so, they move farther than the attack... when you move them with a ship, they count as moving in the ordnance phase, so they can't move. They basically can't double move. Now, what happens in the opponent's ordnance phase? They can move on that one, as long as the ship didn't move beyond their maximum move. So, for example, a 20-centimeter Thunderhawks are escorting a Cobra that moves 30 centimeters. They then cannot move in the opposing player's ordnance phase as well. Though they are still capable of defending that ship they are in base contact with as normal. An ordnance marker or wave is considered to move with the ship if it is escorting and will protect the ship against enemy ordnance it encounters, even in the midst of the ship's movement. Multiple fighters on cap in base contact with a single ship function as independent markers in all respects and are not a wave. When encountering blast markers, roll once per squadron marker. Only fighters and ordnance markers that behave as fighters can be used as cap. Bombers and attack craft cannot be used as cap to protect against ramming or hit-and-run attacks by other ships the escort ship encounters in its own movement phase. Multi-role ordnance markers that can still act as fighters on cap are capable of attacking ships, such as a fighter bombers or Thunderhawks, can only attack ships during the ordnance phase, unless an attacking ship moves into contact with them during the enemy's movement phase. They may not otherwise attack a ship until they leave cap first. So, if the ship in their phase moves in contact with a Chaos ship, the bombers don't get to attack then. But if that cruiser ship moves through them in its movement phase, they can then attack it. Because it's already done its movement, it can't do it in the ordnance phase, and it's basically to prevent one ship to ram into one ship to get a bunch of multi-attacks on one vessel at a time. So, now, fighter type attack craft must be split from attack craft in a mixed wave, or of ordnance that don't have the fighter rule before they can subsequently serve as cap. So, if you want a bunch of fighters to perform screening on one ship, but there's a bunch of bombers, they then have to split off from the wave to become, and so the bombers are left on their own, and then those fighters can move to screen another vessel. Now we're moving on to turrets. There's this new thing called mass turrets and turret suppression. Ships in base contact may mass turrets together, each increasing the turret strength of a ship under attack by 1. Regardless of how many ships are in contact with each other, no single ship can mass turrets with more than 3 others, providing a maximum of +3 to their turret bonus. Now, the ship that masses turrets with a ship under attack take the same ordnance restrictions as the ship under attack as well. So the ship that masses turrets has to fire at the same object that the ship they're defending has fired at. They can't go, oh, these 3 are just this one ship's only going to fire at torpedoes. They're either firing at the same thing or they're not. Ships that are braced can mass turrets and have turrets from other ships massed to defend it. Ships that are crippled cannot mass turrets, but they can have other ships mass turrets to defend it. No more than one ship can be moved at a time for any reason. So ships will only be able to benefit from mass turrets after or before the movement phase is complete, but not during. So what this means is say if you're like, okay, this ship's moving and this ship's moving, so if this ship moves into ordnance, oh, it gets a +1 because of this ship. No, the only time it can benefit from mass is if that ship moves in its turn and comes into base contact, because the ships are moving individually, not at the same time. So they can only do it if when they end their movement or begin their movement, they have a ship in base contact with them and they get attacked by ordnance. They can't gain the benefit from moving into ordnance knowing that the other ship is going to be moving next into contact with it. So it would move into assault, and then the assault would happen. Then the other ship would move in. Then it would from that point on benefit from massing turrets from that other ship. Now, turret suppression. Each fighter in a wave of bombers actually attacking a ship will add a +1 attack to the total attack runs of the wave, regardless of whether they are shot down by turrets or not. The maximum number of bonus attacks that can be added in this way cannot exceed the number of surviving bombers in the wave. There must be at least one surviving bomber in the wave after turret fire to gain these bonus attacks. So, if you have 2 bombers and 3 fighters, you can only get a max of +2 to the bombers, because there's only 2 bombers, not 3. But if all those fighters get destroyed, if all the bombers get destroyed, no attack has happened because the bombers were destroyed. Now, turrets always reduce bomber attack runs, even if they have been used to defend against torpedoes and thus cannot be used to attack craft. So even if they're fired at torpedoes and then get attacked by bombers, they still can they still affect the bomber attack run. Now we'll move on to ramming and boarding and ramming and base sizes. Damage from ramming is not deflected by shields, and once the all-ahead full command check is rolled, normally there are 4 sizes concerning the separate leadership checks to ram the ship to actually successfully pass the ramming check. From biggest to smallest. The worst test can be on 3d6 and the best test can be on 1d6. Using this type order, a ship must roll 2d6 to hit a ship of the same size, 3d6 to hit a ship that is smaller, and 1d6 to hit anything larger. So a medium base ship rolls 2d6 to ram a medium base ship, 3d6 to roll a small d6, and a 1d6 to roll a larger one. So basically it goes by defense, battleship, cruiser, escort. So a cruiser, scratch that. A cruiser needs to pass on 2d6 to hit a cruiser. It needs 3d6 to hit an escort. It needs 1d6 to hit a battleship or a defense. Now, base sizes. Any ship or defense with either 3 or more shields or greater than 10 hit points must use a large base size. However, any capital ship can elect to use a larger base and is considered to have tractor fields. Tractor fields for free. Tractor fields have no effect except making it easier for a ship to ram and or board due to its larger base size, but exchange makes it a bigger target for ordnance. And that's all they did for the ordnance phase on here. So let us move on to hit and run attacks and critical damage. Teleport attacks can be conducted by capital ships that are on lock-on or reload ordnance special orders. All other special orders preclude the use of teleport attacks. And a ship that cannot be boarded, such as chaos vessels with the mark of Nurgle, are not automatically immune from hit and run attacks. Due to their much smaller size, escorts do not have a specialized critical table. Instead, all hit and run attacks, including assault boats and teleport attacks, destroy escorts on a roll of a 4+, as opposed to a 2+. Fleets that enjoy a bonus 2 hit and run rolls still benefit from this bonus, needing a 3+ to successfully destroy a escort with a hit and run attack. Critical hits that can be repaired are cumulative, meaning that if you have 3 of the same critical effect that can be repaired, you need 3 times. You have to repair it 3 times for it to go away, but the effect is only applied once. The only exception to this is fire. If you suffer 3 fire critical hits and you don't pass any of the repairs, you then have 3 points of fire damage added to you. If you repair 1 of them, it's 2 points of fire. If you repair 1 of them, if you repair 2 of them, it's 1 fire damage. Critical hits that cannot be repaired, such as shield collapse or bridge smashed, gets upgraded to the next highest if they suffer that same damage again. This is basically to avoid a ship not taking damage because they already had that damage applied to them. And ships that are reduced to 0 hit points and become hulks no longer have shields or holofields or any similar mechanism. The turret value of a hulk is 0, and hulks cannot be fired upon or boarded by friendly vessels or ordnance in an attempt to deny victory points to the enemy to induce catastrophic damage. So you can't attack them deliberately. In case of torpedoes, you can't fire them directly at the Hulk, but if eventually the Hulk drifts into their path, you can control that. While enemy ships can choose to fire at a Hulk, they do not have to pass a leadership check to ignore one if it's the closest target, because Hulks don't do any damage, so they're not threatened by them. Now, with squadrons, before the start of a game, escort squadrons make a roll to determine their leadership for the entire squadron. Capital ships have to roll theirs individually and before forming squadrons, but capital ship squadrons must be deployed and declared as such before the start of the game. A capital ship squadron assumes the highest leadership of whatever surviving vessel has the highest leadership value in their group. Let's see. Hits taken by squadrons are only distributed amongst the vessels that are actually took the fire that are in range, such as in range of fire and such. So, say if you hit 6 times, but only 3 ships are in range, then only 3 ships are hit, and those other 3 hits go away, because the other ships are out of range. Now, when it comes to capital ships and in squadrons and applying damage to them, if they take enough damage where one capital ship is destroyed, it must roll for and apply all critical damage before counting it as destroyed. So if you destroy one capital ship and you did 2 damage to another ship, you can't roll the ship that was destroyed's critical damage on the ship that only took 2 points of damage to ensure more damage to it. You would basically, as me and the Stark Lord do, we roll the ships down to its 0. We basically roll criticals no matter what. Usually we just say, don't bother rolling because the ship was destroyed, but sometimes you may want to apply, extra damage and all that stuff onto, because you may be able to turn it into a catastrophic damage instead. Now, basically critical hits can't jump over to another ship that didn't take the damage. It all applies to the one ship. Now, if a capital ship squadron disengages in its entirety, each capital ship consolidates its percentage destroyed for victory points separately and not in the same manner as escorts in a squadron. When shooting at squadrons, you must shoot at the closest target first. This does not apply to ordnance attacks. A leadership test cannot be used to pick out an individual ship. You have to target the closest ship first. You can't try and pick out another ship out of all of them. Now, when it comes to disengaging, if a single ship in an escort squadron disengages, the whole escort squadron must then immediately and in subsequent turns attempt to disengage following normal rules. I guess this way, instead of saying, if one, goes off the edge, they're all disengaged. One can disengage, but if you do so, that forces the entire squad to do it as well. This is to prevent you from going, this ship's going to die, well, he'll disengage to prevent victory points, and these guys will stay on, because then I'll deny him victory points that way. No, if you disengage one, you have to disengage them all, and if the others fail, they have to keep trying to disengage. They can't do anything else, pretty much. Now, capital ships in a squadron may disengage separately, relying on their own individual base leadership to do so, not the highest leadership in the squadron. If it attempts to disengage and fails, it falls out of the squadron and may not attempt to rejoin it. It is, for all intents, a solitary capital ship for the rest of the game. This is on top of the rules that we talked about for disengaging in the rulebook. And just another note, you apply all positive and negative modifiers must be added together before determining the leadership check, and even check rolls of 11 or 12 still automatically fail. So even if you managed with bonuses and all that get a higher leadership than 10, it doesn't matter. 11 and 12 always fail. Now, they altered sun flares to where you only have one, no matter how many times you roll it. If you roll it multiple times on the chart, that just increases your chance of it happening in a single turn, but once it has happened, you don't roll it ever again, even if you had like 4 solar flares and you only rolled 1. That just means you roll 4 dice, once it happens, you stop rolling. Fighting sunward is only of consequence in the flare region, mercurial zone, and the inner biosphere. After that, the sunward edge has no effect in terms of firing at or towards or away from. Now, with planets in their gravity well, the free turn provided by the gravity well can be used even when a ship cannot normally turn, such as when under all-ahead full or lock-on special orders. They can also be combined with come to a new heading special orders, provided the additional turning opportunities, and of course the free turn always happens before you move. After you move, the come to a new heading has to roll the standard turning rules. The ship must actually be in the gravity well to use it, and the free turn is only towards the center of the planet's or moon's gravity well, or towards the space hulk stem, or no more than 45 degrees, whichever is less. Now, what happens if a ship is on a planetary template? When a ship's stem is actually on the template does not block line of sight or any ship's line of sight to it. If multiple ships are on a planetary template, they can all see each other. Torpedoes on a planetary template are only destroyed when they come in contact with the template's edge. So if you're on the template and you fire torpedoes, they're removed when they hit the edge of the planet's template. If they're fired outside and they hit if they fire from the outside of the planet template towards it, they are only removed once they make contact with the edge. So eventually the edge destroys them, whether you're on the planet or off the planet. Now, radiation bursts still happen multiple times, and you still follow the same rule. If you rolled for 3, you roll 3d6, 1 radiation burst goes off, you then roll 2d6, 1 radiation burst goes off, you roll 1d6, 1 radiation burst goes off, and so on and so forth. And that was all they did for that. And now let's move on to asteroid fields. Asteroid fields, ships moving through an asteroid field or coming into contact with the edge of one must pass a leadership test on 2d6. If the ship is gone all ahead full, it's 3d6 instead. And escorts may re-roll this. Escorts in capital ship squadron make their leadership test normally once for the whole squadron. In the case of capital ship squadrons that fail this test, each ship that comes into contact with the asteroid field in any way suffers d6 damage. Whereas escorts, they re-roll this, and if they still fail, they take 1d6 points of damage, and that's distributed amongst the squadron. So for capital ship squadrons, each ship takes d6 points of damage. For escorts, the whole squad gets 1d6 distributed amongst the ones that went into it. Shields do absorb this as normal, minus holofields, and any other ones that say they don't protect against it, but you don't place blast markers down on the ship. Instead, they just incur the -5 movement for that turn. And a warp drive implosions are not affected by celestial phenomena for the purposes of line of sight. Hits taken by a squadron are only distributed among the vessels that actually took fire, such as in range of the firing arc. So if the warp implosion happens and it hits a squadron, but only 3 of the ships are in range of the implosion, then only those 3 can be affected regardless of how many times it hits the squadron. So, that is it for the 2010 Compendium. I hope you all enjoyed this, and you know, if you have any questions, leave a comment. I will answer individual comments if it seems to be just a one-time question. If you notice there's a question on the comment list and you want that asked as well, and you want to ask that as well, just like the comment, and if I notice a bunch of comments getting a lot of likes, then I will do a FAQ video regarding those questions. Everything else is all based off of armies individually, which with this new knowledge that we've applied on these videos, you have a better you can jump into the different races that you want to go to and have a better understanding of how they operate and apply the rules to them as normally and incorporate their own special rules with less hassle. So, and again, the only reason why I'm not doing the individual races is because that would just take too long. And so, that is all for now. Again, if you haven't, like us on Facebook, like us on Twitter, and if you haven't subscribed to us yet, subscribe now so you can keep up with us and see what we like. If there's any ideas for videos that you want me to do, or anything like that, just leave a comment and we'll see what we can do. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, Fearless Gamers, take care!